Okay, what is up there, YouTube? This is J-Man Time, and today I have yet another video on yet another experimental weapons project from the Cold War era that could have been useful both during the Cold War and especially in the post-Cold War era of the 1990s and the 21st century. And this weapon system here is a Soviet experimental weapon that could be considered one of the first true Soviet PDW type weapon systems ever developed for the Soviet armed forces towards the middle of the Cold War era. And this weapon system here could have been a game changer when it came to Soviet compact arms that could have been used by both the Soviet forces and their allies during the Cold War. And that weapon system is the Soviet AO-46. AO-46 was an experimental gas-operated 5.45mm Soviet compact carbine/assault rifle project that was developed in 1969. This weapon system was developed by Peter Andreevich Kachov, who was a Soviet arms designer working for the Central Scientific Research Institute for Precision Machine Engineering, which was a Soviet design bureau that specialized in developing weapons for the Soviet GRAU, which were a branch of the Soviet Special Forces and are currently a branch of the Russian Special Forces. Now, the AO-46 was developed as part of Project Modern. Project Modern was a Soviet arms project/weapons competition that began in the late 1960s as a way to develop a new compact assault rifle to substitute the AKM and AK-47 series of assault rifles. At the time, this project/competition was started as a response to the American XM-177 series of compact assault rifles that were being used in the Vietnam War. The XM-177, also known as the CAR-15, was America's PDW type assault rifle carbine of the era, and the Soviets wanted to develop their own equivalent to the XM-177/CAR-15. Now, the end result of Project Modern would be the Soviet AKS-74U and the AK-74 series as a whole of light fully automatic select fire assault rifle carbines. But the AO-46 was one of the many experimental weapons that was developed, carbine/PDW type weapons that were developed during Project Modern. Now, the AO-46 was a very lightweight weapon. It is considered a PDW by modern standards, or a personal defense weapon by modern standards. It was chambered in the Soviet 5.45 by 39mm cartridge. The weapon overall weighed just 4.4 pounds or 2 kilograms and had a rate of fire of 700 rounds per minute. This weapon system is a telescoping bolt type compact assault rifle carbine/PDW, very similar to the Israeli Uzi or the Czech Samopol series of submachine guns. But this here is an assault rifle/PDW chambered for the much larger 5.45 cartridge. The weapon system was fed by a 15-round box magazine and again had a rate of fire of 700 rounds per minute, and again it only weighed 4.4 pounds. This weapon system here could have been a very useful weapon for Soviet special forces, but unfortunately the project was canceled in the 1970s, again in favor of the AKS-74U series of light compact assault rifles that would later become one of the standard issue assault rifle/assault carbines in the Soviet armed forces. The weapon system overall was only about the size of a sawed-off shotgun. This weapon system could have also been very useful in the post-Cold War era as a major export weapon by the post-war Russian Federation. The Russian Federation currently sells a large number of older late Soviet era weapons as export weapons to its various client states. This weapon system also could have been useful in many post-Soviet conflicts involving Russia and their allies. For example, the Syrian War, the ongoing Ukraine War, and a number of wars in Africa, for example, the current war in Sudan and the war in Libya. It also could have been a very useful export to countries in Latin America, for example, Cuba, Venezuela, which are also client states of Russia. And it could have been a useful weapon in many of the Cold War conflicts in Asia and many of the post-Cold War era conflicts happening now in Asia, or that could happen now in Asia. For example, the Vietnam War, or the potential second Korean War that could pop off at any moment now between North Korea and South Korea. Now, ultimately, this weapon project was canceled, but if it had been adopted, it would have been one of the more advanced PDW type weapon systems issued to Soviet forces and Soviet aligned forces during the Cold War, and it would have been a very useful weapon in the post-Cold War era. But what do you all think of this weapon system? The forgotten Soviet AO-46, a very advanced PDW type weapon system that was ahead of its time, developed in the late 1960s, but was ultimately canceled in favor of the AKS-74U. What do you all think of this? Please tell me in the comment section below. And until next time, this was J-Man Time, signing off.